This is the story of how I thought I met the man of my dreams and ended up living a nightmare. After leaving my husband, I was trying to piece together how I ended up in this situation, and one night I found a box of journals that I had kept for 20 years that helped me fill in the missing pieces, the things that I had pushed aside, that I had told myself weren't a big deal, and then completely forgot about. The names and identifying details have been changed for protection and privacy. It's 3 years into our marriage, and I'm pregnant with our first child. Jim has finished his teaching credential, but still hasn't finished his master's. I don't have any perspective on how long it should take, but I'm getting frustrated that it's not finished. Though he is working part-time in a cabinet shop, I'm the primary breadwinner in the family, until Jim starts working full-time about a month before our first baby is due. I want to throw one last party before having a baby. I know it may be a while before this happens again, so I carefully plan a menu, and we invite a few couples over for dinner. Jim's friend Corey, the one who couldn't get enough of him at the wedding back east, is living in San Francisco now and has a boyfriend. Jim wants to invite them. They arrive an hour and a half late. I've been trying to keep dinner warm for over an hour when Corey walks in the door and right past the spread of appetizers to grab a box of pretzels off the top of the fridge and starts chowing down. We sit down to eat, and she and her boyfriend say they aren't hungry because they've stuffed themselves with hot dogs and burgers at a ball game before they got there. And when someone passes Corey the mashed potatoes, she comments on how much she hates mashed potatoes. When I start getting dessert ready, Corey and her boyfriend get up from the table and say they're exhausted and take their leave. I truly like Corey less and less every time we see her. I am diagnosed with preeclampsia at 8 months pregnant and need to start working from home. Then we find out the baby is breech. The doctor suggests I get a procedure to try to flip him around. It's the most painful thing I've ever experienced. After several attempts with no luck, the baby's heart rate is dropping, so they need to stop, and my doctor says she highly recommends a cesarean. We arrive at the hospital bright and early, still not knowing the sex of the baby. If it's a girl, we'll name her Anna. If it's a boy, we have a list of ideas, but nothing set in stone. In the elevator of the hospital, Jim suggests the name Aiden for the first time. I tell him I'm not a fan of the name, and since we haven't picked anything out yet, we decide we'll wait until we see the baby to decide which name would be a good fit. I'm given a thin robe and told to sit on a cold metal table with my feet on a rolling bench while the spinal block is administered. I'm chilled, shaking, and scared of the spinal tap, the surgery, and being a mom at 24 years old. The anesthesiologist is frustrated that I'm shaking and snaps at me that if I don't stop shaking and hold absolutely still, he might miss and I'd be paralyzed forever, which makes me shake and tremble all the more. A kind nurse named Supatra shoots him a dirty look. She puts her arm around me and tells me I'll be okay. Jim is too nervous himself to provide much comfort. A short time later, I'm numb from the chest down. There are doctors, nurses, and drapes everywhere. Completely immobile and surrounded by an operating room full of people, I begin to vomit violently. I can only move from my neck up, so a nurse holds a bucket to the side of my head. There is little in my stomach, so the vomit quickly turns to dry heaving. My heart is racing, my chest is ice cold, and the cold begins to creep into the rest of my body. I still haven't seen or felt my child, and I feel so sick I wonder if I'm going to die before I do. Through the chaos I hear, "It's a boy," and then there's this sort of excitement around the baby, and I don't know what's happening, and they tell me they need to take him away. The anesthesiologist gives me something to counteract the dry heaves and the cold creeping through my body. I'm feeling slightly better as they stitch me up. Then the kind nurse comes back and tells me Aiden swallowed amniotic fluid, but he's going to be just fine. Aiden? Jim named the baby Aiden? I'm thrilled the baby is okay, but I'm shocked he's already been given a name. I haven't seen or held him yet, and Jim just gave him the name he wanted, a name he knew that I wasn't a fan of. Finally, I get to see this perfect little person. I can't believe anyone trusts me to know what to do with the baby. Because of the surgery, I have to stay in the hospital for several days, but they don't have room for Jim to stay with me for the first night. Aiden spends most of the first night screaming. He can't latch on, and I'm not producing milk for him yet anyway. I still have the catheter, and the pain of surgery is overcoming the pain meds. I am beyond tired and overwhelmed. Jim has gone home for the night, and I feel utterly alone. At 4 a.m., I call Jim, crying, asking him to come as soon as he can. I really need help, and to please bring me something to eat. He says he'll be there soon. Hours later, he still isn't there. I call him repeatedly, but there's no answer. I am overwhelmed and trying to take care of the baby, and worried sick something happened to Jim. He finally shows up 9 hours later, acting totally normal. I'm upset and ask him where he's been. He says he's fallen asleep and couldn't help it that he was tired, and acts like I'm being completely unreasonable for being upset. He does bring me food, a can of pears. A can of pears. 9 hours later, after asking for help. It's not funny, but I tell that story and laugh about it with my family for years, often affectionately referring to Jim as the absent-minded professor. I suppose turning it into a joke is easier than processing the reality that I've just had a baby with someone who shows this little respect to me and to our new child. For the first few months, Aiden barely sleeps, cries incessantly, and is so loud that Jim purchases industrial earplugs to wear when he's around him. The colic and reflux is next level. Multiple times a day, he spits up all over himself and me, repeatedly, and despite changing our clothes and doing more laundry than I ever have done in my life, we seem to smell like spit up much of the first couple months of his life. But we start to find a rhythm, and I learn that he doesn't cry as long as he's attached to me, and his joyful, smiling, glowing personality is infectious. I wear him in a sling or carry him in a pack for much of the first many months of his life. When I make dinner, he's tucked in a fabric sling on my back, peering over my shoulder, safely out of reach, watching and cooing as I chop, stir, cook. He loves to cook to this day. We walk through the streets of San Francisco, Aiden face out in the front pack with the biggest, brightest blue eyes and beaming smile brightening the faces of the eclectic San Franciscans we pass on the street. People of all ages and walks of life would light up and smile back, and it was so amazing to see his light reflected in their expressions. Aiden sometimes comes to work with me, but I work from home as often as I can, and we take lots of excursions through the paths of Golden Gate Park or frolicking along the beach, going to the Academy of Sciences to see the roundabout of fish or feeding the penguins. And when Jim gets home from teaching most days, I head to my home office to get some more focused work in. When Aiden is about 5 months old, my mom watches him so we can have our first kid-free date. Jim had gotten this job at this small Russian school. The school dances are really unique. They're attended by both parents and students, and everyone's dressed up in formal attire, very modest, and doing dances, like traditional waltzes and ballroom dances. I'm dressed in my sister's velvet dress with layers of gorgeous fringe and 4-inch heels. I am 25 years old, feeling beautiful and free and like myself again after the pregnancy and birth. I arrive a little later than Jim, and I am confidently walking towards the ballroom, but just as I enter the room, I feel my feet slip from underneath me, and it feels like ages that I'm waiting to make contact with the floor, bracing myself for the crash. Instead, I have landed softly in a man's arms. I look up to see Jim standing next to me while I am cradled in the arms of an unknown man. Jim says, "Maggie, this is Sasha. Sasha, this is my wife, Maggie," as I am gently and effortlessly set back on my feet. And it's explained that Sasha is a principal dancer at the San Francisco Ballet and the parent of one of Jim's students. A little bit later, Jim is leading me around the dance floor when we are interrupted by Sasha. He looks at Jim and says, "May I?" as he reaches for my hand. And then he says to Jim, "Let me show you how it's done." For the next several minutes, Sasha whisks me around the room. I can literally feel what he wants me to do. It is the most intimate and connected experience I have ever had with another person. I feel like I'm floating. He returns me to the spot where Jim is standing. I am blushing as Jim asks me, "So, how was it?" And I am stumbling over my words, just trying to say that it was fine. But the glow of that night brightens my busy and domestic life as a 25-year-old mom for a while. And I tamped down the knowing that that dance with Sasha felt more intimate and connected than anything I've ever felt with my husband. After the dance, I head home, and Jim goes out with some teachers from the school. He promises he'll be home by 11. At 2 a.m., I'm up with Aiden, but there's no Jim. I walk outside to see if the car's there. It's not. I'm holding Aiden as I pace back and forth on the sidewalk, wondering if Jim's okay. A few hours later, he finally comes home and says he just lost track of time chatting with a coworker. He apologizes and smooths things over. Hayden starts crawling at about 6 months old and is constantly on the move and into everything. Climbing bookshelves, pulling open drawers, stuffing everything in sight into his mouth. It is an epic struggle trying to stay ahead of the baby proofing. We are fortunate to live in an apartment downstairs from my parents. It's pretty small, but it's really nice to have families so close. Aiden often climbs the stairs in the morning to visit my mom, gently knocking on her door and yelling, "Min?" to ask if he can come in. Or sometimes she would come down in the morning to visit us, and when she would knock on our apartment door to visit, he would exclaim, "Min," to let her know she could come in. We take Aiden back to the East Coast to meet the rest of his family. Jim's mom has gotten remarried and is now living in this sprawling, big home with her new husband, and we're staying with them. A few nights into our visit, I wake up in the middle of the night and find that I'm alone in bed. I head downstairs, feeling my way through the darkness of this unfamiliar house to explore what has happened to my husband, figuring he must have fallen asleep watching TV downstairs. But he is nowhere to be found in the house. I go to check outside, the side yard, the front yard, the backyard, even turning on the lights of the pool, worried he may have fallen in. Nothing. I start to feel my anxiety grow with each passing minute. All the cars are there. There's nothing walkable. I can't imagine where he could be, what could have happened to him. Do I wake up his mom, call the police? He has just disappeared in the middle of the night. I worry and pace for hours. Finally, I see lights illuminate the circular driveway, and Jim hops out of the car. When I ask what happened to him, where was he? He says, "Oh, I just went to see my friend Mick. I didn't want to disturb you," he says. I'm angry. I tell him I think it's awful he would leave the house and not tell me. How would he feel if I did that? He calls me darling, saying how much he loves me and knows how badly I need my sleep and how much he didn't want to worry me. I am so frustrated. I attempt to share my perspective in a variety of ways, thinking I must just not be explaining myself clearly because I feel so unheard. I ask why he didn't leave a note, but he just keeps insisting that he was being considerate by not disturbing me. That day, I am a sleep-deprived wreck. I tell my mother-in-law what happened, and she laughs. She says that Jim is just like his dad. She used to be up frequently, worried sick, wondering what happened to him, calling hospitals, thinking maybe this time he got in an accident. I don't think it's so funny. This is new since the birth of Aiden. It's happened more than once, being up in the early hours of the morning, unable to sleep, because he simply didn't come home and didn't call. But he tells me I'm being ridiculous. My mother-in-law is laughing at it like it's totally normal. And I wonder, maybe it is me. His behavior is confusing and unsettling, but 95% of the time, things still feel great and easy. Jim is often really loving with me, fun and playful with Aiden. And no relationship is perfect, I tell myself. Looking back, I want to scream at my younger, people-pleasing self and tell her to get out while she can. To tell her that she doesn't need to sacrifice herself and her worth to be loved and respected. That she can have her needs and wants and boundaries. But at 24, I wasn't there yet, and I wouldn't be for far too long. If you'd like to hear the rest of the story, please like and subscribe. You can also visit my blog at metamorphosistoolbox.com, where I've posted some of the tools that I used while I was getting out of my marriage and healing from it. Thank you so much for listening.